So, do you do your vow renewals for your couples, or do the couples have to do their own vows?
No, so some couples prefer to write their own vows. They know what they want to say, and they're all right with the words. And you can Google it or you can look it up. But other couples want me to write their vows for them because they're not confident about what they want to say. So we can have a conversation about how they feel about each other. Sometimes that means a little bit of a side conversation separately because it can get a bit awkward and embarrassing. People don't always like talking about their feelings. But if I can get a sense of how they feel about each other, then I can write something that's a little bit more appropriate. So the couple I met a few weeks ago were quite open about how they felt about each other, and they sat there and they told me how they met, what their love story had been like, what their first kiss was like. I asked lots of quite intimate questions, and they were telling me all of these details, what their first date was, so that all of this content I can include in what I'm going to write for them as their love story for their wedding. And then if they want me to write their vows, I can include how I can see they feel about each other. And you can draw on lots of different things. You can draw on what they actually say. Sometimes they come out with a beautiful little nugget of information and they phrase it in just a lovely way. You can use that. But other times, if you're looking for inspiration, you can use Rumi, if you've heard of him and his writings, or you can go to contemporary poetry, and there's loads of it about, people are writing and putting out stuff on the internet all the time about love poems or funeral poetry, as we were talking about before. So yeah, there is loads of inspiration out there. So if couples want me to write, I will write. If they don't, they can write their own, and I can tinker with them.
And what about different types of weddings? Does it have to be a traditional wedding to have you? Or if I'm looking for something a little bit more different, can you
No,
help me decide?
I really like different weddings. I'm quite happy to do a black tie wedding. I'm doing one next year, but I would much rather do something a bit alternative, a bit different. Maybe a steampunk wedding would be my dream wedding at the moment, or a biker. I used to ride a motorbike before I got arthritis in my hip. So, but a biker wedding, a goth wedding. I can see my daughters growing into that kind of goth arena. So yeah, those are the sort of weddings I'd really like to do. So if you're looking for a wedding or a vow renewal that's a little bit different, if you want a stone building filled with candles, I'm sure we can find one of those up in Derbyshire somewhere, even if it's falling down. I was just thinking, did they?
Can I interview from raw from the off?
Yeah,
Somebody that's never met you before.
yeah,
I think
yeah.
that would be great from.
Oh,
There you go. So thank you. It's not coming in handy. So we're just because I've never met you, you've never met me, and
no,
the thing that got me going, you coming into the room, you saying that you're a barrister
yeah.
prior to this. So I love how people have got to where they are now
Mm-hmm.
in a completely different vocation, having had a career in something else before. But if I just say start it from the off. So hi, it's lovely to meet you. Can you tell me your name, please?
Oh, my name's Cheryl. Cheryl
Cheryl.
Monk.
Cheryl Monk.
Monk.
Nice to meet you, Cheryl. So, can you tell me a bit about your background and what you did prior to coming into
So
your
I've
role now as a celebrant?
Yep. So I've worked for the CPS, Crown Prosecution Service, for 35 years. They trained me in the early days to be a barrister. So I've been in and around the Crown Court, being a barrister, prosecuting in the Magistrates Court and the Crown Court for all of that time. And more recently, managing people who do that. So managing the Crown Advocate team that the CPS have.
Right. So then there must have been a point where you thought, I've had enough of this, or
Well,
something a change in your life possibly that then
yeah.
brought you to something completely different. I mean, what sparked you into a completely different career now?
So I was thinking as I was approaching retirement, I'm 57 now, so I was looking at sort of retiring at 60 after doing so many years. What am I going to do? Friends of mine were around me were setting up small businesses, and I thought, what can I do in retirement that will just keep me ticking over and bring in a little bit of income on top of my pension?
Mm.
My aunt died and left her body to medical science, which was a little bit of a surprise to the rest of the family. We didn't know she was going to do that. But by the time they got to her, she'd gone a bit stale because you have to get to the body really quickly if you leave the body to medical science. So it was over New Year. So by the time 2nd of January came around, they said, no, I'm sorry, it's too late. So they cremated her and gave us the ashes. And we said, oh, well, that's great. There's been no funeral director involved. It's just the ashes and the family. So the family said, well, you're the barrister. Can you lead the ceremony, please? And we'll have a memorial service in the village hall. So that's what we did. And I thought, well, this is going to be easy because obviously just stand up, say a few bits and pieces. So I did a bit of research and realised it wasn't actually as easy as I thought it was going to be. And it was actually, for me, because it was my maternal aunt, it was quite emotional. So I thought, well, this is actually something, this is a thing. I didn't know this was a thing, a celebrant. I can do this. It's using the skills that I've already got and transferring them. So I started to plan to do that. And then I got really bad arthritis in my hip, which meant that I had to have a hip replacement, which meant that I had to stop the crazy world of working in the CPS, which is extraordinarily busy. And I was just so immersed in it, I hadn't looked up for years.
Many hours of work a week, I'm sure.
But many.
A
So
lot of stress.
Had an enforced break, if you like. I had to stop. I had to have the hip operation. And I had to sit on the sofa and recover. And knowing that I don't like sitting on the sofa and doing nothing, watching box sets much, I thought, well, I'll do that celebrant training I've been meaning to do just before my operation. And then when I'm recovering, I can set up a website and set the business up then. So that's what I did.
So how do you go about doing the celebrant training, and how long does that last for? Is it a course you have to go on?
It's a course.
An official
yes.
course? Do you have
you get
an official certificate then?
You get a certificate. There are training bodies that have set themselves up. It's not very organised. There are some professional bodies that are doing it, but there is very little regulation about it. And from a world of regulation and criminal justice, I kind of thought this is a bit ad hoc. But yeah, so I went with the best that I could find, the most reputable training company that I could find. They've just won some awards for their training. I did it online because I couldn't move very well at the time because of my hip. So I did a week's training online, full days, lots of training about, I didn't know how funerals worked. I didn't know how cremation worked. So I learned all about that. I learned all about, there's a lot of public speaking content in it, which obviously I was familiar with. So that wasn't so much of a deep dive into training, but there was a lot of formula and discussion about how to client management, talking to families, and I've had quite a lot of experience doing that when I've spoken to grieving families doing manslaughter cases or murder cases, or cases where people have been killed on the roads, so road traffic accidents resulting in death. So I've met families in that arena before, and it is a similar kind of skill.
So do you follow a certain model or structure in when you obviously meet the families, whether they are arranging a funeral for somebody or a couple that's looking to get married? Do you follow a certain structure that you go to, sort of information gathering to get the details that you need then to deliver your speech on the day, or your?
Yeah, I have a questionnaire that I would ask. If it was a grieving family, I would have a questionnaire. I don't give them the questionnaire to fill in. It's just a guide for me to guide the conversation. So the conversation can go all the way, and I take notes. Generally, with a family who are grieving, they are keen to tell you about their deceased, and it can be quite a jolly kind of meeting because they're telling stories about how much they love that person. So it can be quite joyful, which is what I was looking for, transitioning from being a criminal prosecutor to doing something different. I wanted a bit more joy in my life.
Yeah.
So it is actually quite joyful, taking down the stories about how much love there is for somebody who's died.
It's an honour, isn't it?
It is an honour to do that.
You're placed in a situation where it's an honour to be part of that.
Yeah. And the same with celebrating somebody's union, somebody's marriage, whether it's actually a formal marriage, whether it's a hand fasting or not. And listening to somebody's love story is also a privilege because they don't reveal that to everybody. You don't tell your hairdresser all about that. Well, you might.
All of this is quite intimate, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And so I follow.
You're being allowed into the fold, regardless of whether it's at the beginning of somebody's journey
or the end.
Beginning of somebody or a couple's journey together.
So I will follow a sort of questionnaire that I've devised using other people's, the guides that I got in my training, but developing it myself. To ask the family the information. And I think there are a lot of services that you might go to, funeral services, where they start out with John Smith was born in Newport on the 1st of April, and he lived there until his mum and dad did this, and this is when he started work doing this. I don't subscribe to that school. I don't like to start in that position. I think you can weave a story much more creatively and more in a more interesting way if you kind of start in the middle, or you start with an anecdote,
That's
or you start,
interesting.
or you start with the end.
So everyone's go-to is to
Yeah.
go from the beginning.
Well, everybody wants to do chronological, don't they?
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
think the more creative celebrants will look for an angle, a different way of starting it. So I
Can you give an
recently,
example then of when you've gone a little bit?
yeah, so I recently
Off-piste.
did an Irish Guardsman.
Okay.
He was only an Irish Guardsman for 3 years, but it really had a massive impact on his life. And a lot of the music that was being used during the ceremony was the Irish Guards marching music, Nimrod, of course, which is very popular with funerals. But yeah, so I started with he was I think he was 6'4" or 6", depending on who he told. And he was born in Long Eaton in Derbyshire, and all of his family were Irish Guardsmen. So I started from the angle of what else was he ever going to be? He was always going to be an Irish Guardsman because his grandfather was his mum, and this is the impact that it had on his life, and this is how proud he was of that.
Genetically
Yeah,
predestined
yeah.
almost to.
It didn't stay like that, and then we
No.
moved on to his love of walking in the Derbyshire Dales and the fact that he was a BT engineer. He was a BT engineer for far longer than he was an Irish Guardsman, but that was what really, really led his life, and that was what he was most proud of. So, yeah, so that's where we started.
Fantastic. So how many weddings have you done so far? Would you say?
Oh, don't ask me that because I haven't done very many.
You've not done many.
I've done I did hand fasting for a couple that renew their hand fasting every year from Bali at Nine Ladies Stone Circle, and that really kind of solidified for me this kind of leaning into paganism, leaning into witchcraft, and leaning into that kind of moving with the seasons and learning about the herbs and the plants that grow around us.
You are able to offer otherworldly
Yeah.
celebrant services outside of
outside
a
church.
church.
Yeah,
and that's brilliant. So
I've learned quite.
that
Yeah.
you're involved with.
So I've moved on quite a lot from that as a result of that, really. And then I did a hand fasting a couple of weeks ago, where I was able to get my altar table out and the things that go on the altar table. I was able to explain.
Nothing sacrificial, I hope.
No, just some salt, maybe some honey, honey cakes, a bit of wine, maybe, those kinds of things. Elements that represent the earth, air, fire, and what's the fourth element? Water, of course. Yeah, we had some wine. Yeah, so you kind of just trying to represent the four elements.
So would you like to position yourself as somebody that would want to be the go-to person?
Yes.
For the more alternative.
Yeah, because I think you can find a regular celebrant really easily. There's a lot of celebrants out there.
You mentioned earlier about steampunks, goths, obviously pagans. Yeah. That's great.
So I'm going to do the steampunk event at Christmas in Newark.
Yeah.
Sadly, I was at a festival myself when the steampunk event happened in Lincoln last weekend, but next year. Yeah, next year maybe.
And bikers.
Yes, well, I used to ride a bike, and my husband took me out he said, we're going to cheer you up and take you out on a trip. I said, where are we going? And we pulled up outside a motorcycle dealer's, and he said, go and sit on some bikes.
Yeah.
We haven't got any money, but anyway.
I know that you're a celebrant, which is a very serious job, and then like bikes, stitches. Yeah. I love it.
So I want to do some celebrant work at festivals. So at Collingham Show, I'm going to set my stall out for the village. I've got a gazebo. I'm going to have some witchy kind of trinkets in there. I'm going to set up my altar table, and I'm going to offer to do people. You can bring Brad along, and you can jump the broom.
Well, there's a particular church in Newark as well, isn't there?
Is there?
Is a hub for. In fact, it's a pagan church.
I did not know that.
Right, well, there you go.
I will go and look for that.
So yeah, there is an old stone built, tiny chapel
I'll go and have a look.
Been repurposed as a pagan church. So maybe that's good place for you to offer your services
There's
as well.
also more of a crossover, isn't it, Pagan? Because I dared to have this conversation with our Catholic priest
Mm.
that when it began, Christianity, it was more fused with paganism.
Absolutely.
You
I was
realise it's not like one ended and another began because of the seasons and
Yeah,
the
exactly.
way,
And we've just,
like Easter lambs and everything. It's all actually
as a
connected,
society,
isn't it?
we've just moved away
Yeah.
from the need to rely on seasons and produce that comes with
Yeah.
the seasons and the vegetation that grows outside our back doors. But I was just talking to Steph about looking at my Book of Shadows and going through the Sabbats, which are the sort of moon celebrations, and they're all aligned with our current, regular secular or Christian celebrations. So Yule, Christmas. You've got Ibok in February, which is close enough to Valentine's Day to be that. Um, you've got Beltane, which is the first of May, which is we've celebrated. Well, what is the 1st of May? Is it Workers' Day? Is it May Day?
A lot
Is
of
it a
it's
pagan
all circled around
celebration?
farming, isn't it?
It,
Ultimately,
absolutely, because you've then got a harvest festival
and
later
that's
on.
where it is. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the
You've got Lanusa, which is also called Lammas, which is basically harvest festival. So and then you've got Halloween. Yay, coming up to Halloween. I'd love to have a Halloween hand fasting. I'd love to do a Halloween.
So when you say hand fasting, though, is that a pagan marriage of sorts?
Well, it might be pagan because it's so old, and we were pagans back in the day. But if you wanted to be joined with another person in the eyes of society, the first thing you did was demonstrate your connection by walking around the village hand in hand. And the next step was to be hand fasted, which was essentially just a ceremony, either performed by whoever was the ceremony person in your village, whether we've moved into Christianity and it was a priest, because they did it as well,
a high priest,
or whether just a Christian priest. This is where the paganism and Christians cross over, because if you've watched Braveheart or any of those. Exactly, and that is what hand fasting is. So you join hands and you tie the couple's hands together with either, it would have been a strip of tartan or a piece of lace or something torn from your mother's petticoat, or I currently am using ribbons and ropes and that sort of thing. And you tie them together and you say a few words, and then that's it. You're off. You'll go for a year and a day.
I didn't know any of this until I met you. I'm
Oh.
actually like,
it's fascinating.
Well, I thought of that Braveheart scene when you started to think about it. I thought that's a Braveheart scene.
Oh, what's the other program that they? Where the Scottish woman, travels through time. Oh, people are mad about it. I've never watched it. But she basically bangs her head on a tree and she travels back through time. She ends up in Scotland with a laird in a castle, and they have a hand fasting. It's not as.
I like the sound of this.
Yeah,
it's a little bit more.
I don't know.
It's a massive TV series.
So when when you've done this celebrant service for a couple, you've done the hand fasting.
Mm-hmm.
So how do they then go about registering that as a formal marriage?
It's not.
So it's not. So it's purely
they're promised to each other.
Right.
So you can do it privately.
Promised to each other.
You can do it in front of friends, whatever you want to do.
The formality in it, the person that's making it formal,
is me.
Is you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I will say a few words, generally something along the lines of, these are the hands that you work together with, these are the hands that will build a house with, these are the hands that will love each other with. We'll say a few words like that. They might make some promises to each other.
We don't always need a piece of paper, do we, or a certificate to say
and
you are man and wife. It can be
more people
an exchange.
I think more people are leaning into their spiritual nature. You see in society at the moment, whether it's just because when you start getting interested in something, you see it everywhere. But there's witchcraft shops springing up all over the place.
There's one in Newark.
There is one in Newark. In fact, there's two in Newark. One of them's closed down, but I don't think it was the same person. But there are festivals that are starting, pagan festivals that are beginning to arrive, and people are talking a lot more about foraging, about gathering food from the hedgerows, about
using being resourceful and
using dandelion root and nettle tea and natural remedies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And this is all stuff that I looked at and was involved in my early 20s, and then I got my head stuck in the CPS, and they've given me a fantastic career and lifestyle.
So you've come back to the earth.
Yeah, come full circle.
You've gone into the world of law and been in some uncomfortable situations, and I'm sure now you're giving back.
So I
And
think
maybe it's the antidote.
that's,
yeah.
Having to
the earth calling you.
I think my head was in the beehive for so long that when I looked up, I realised that there was so much more around than there was when I was. Not that I was, doing anything bad. I was serving society and prosecuting.
Love, essentially, it's love of a whole life,
Mhm.
of love and a union. Whereas you were probably having to deal with so many situations that were quite painful,
Mm.
actually, and fixing it. But this is now the antidote. Almost,
Yeah.
which is really nice, isn't it?
More joy. That's what I want. More joy in my life.
I think you're going to make a lot of people happy with what you can offer.
Yeah, hopefully.
And so you've done a few hand fasting sessions or ceremonies rather.
Yeah, I've got another one coming up in October.
And you have had experience doing funerals. You mentioned that the Irish Guards.
That's right. Yes.
Irish Guardsmen. And have you got anything lined up in the near future or in the future that you are?
So I'm working on. So I'm working on the basis of one wedding a month going through the next year. So I've got 4 weddings booked for next summer.
Right. Okay.
But I'm also working with a friend of mine who's a wedding singer on setting up some wedding networking, because there's loads of networking around, but when you go to network, you don't necessarily meet other professionals from within the wedding industry, and that's quite hard to do. So we're going to set up some networking around there. We want to do our own wedding fairs because, oh my God, they're expensive.
Well, wedding fairs are obviously very prevalent and
so
expensive territories to be in.
If you wanted a stall at a wedding fair, I saw one advertised yesterday for £700. But even, basic pub wedding fair, you're talking about £150, £200. And that's really hard as a celebrant, because you're talking to couples who are looking at getting married in 2026, 27. And that's fine, but that is not going to feed my family next month. So there's a long lead-in time. And a lot of the time you're talking to those couples and they may not come back to you for a year. You may never hear from them again, or you might hear from them. So it's
true, because they're talking to lots of other.
I'm learning so
people,
much
but
about.
It sounds to me like you've got a real niche in what you do.
I think that's what I wanted to do. Find something that was.
There aren't too many people that
are
available, I suppose, with what you can offer.
Yeah, hopefully there are a few. There's some people that I follow that have given me lots of inspiration.
Being able to find you, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, and it's great to meet you today, and that you can tell us about your story and your background and what you've got to offer to people.
Thank you.
That was a lovely smile. Did you know to do it? Good time.
He just reminded me that he went back into interview mode. He just reminded me that he was